Yesterday I had the privilege, last night it didn't feel much like a privilege, of meeting with 11 different committee staff and in 3 or 4 cases members of Congress, and in the process was describing about what we are about to do. And I talked about it, that the community does its due diligence. That is, due diligence is more than doing science. It's really doing the science that really goes forward to enable us to build a more evidence-based future for policy development. And you know, it was interesting because they went, what do you mean by due diligence? And it gave us a conversation, and I'd like to suggest that that's what we were doing here all afternoon. Oh, well, we got time for a question. Please come forth. There's a mic right here. Pardon? 2 questions, okay? I got 4 questions. Donald, I'm going to turn this over to you. Sir, it's all yours. Yeah, you can trade carbon here, guys. Please, sir.
I have one question. Why didn't I hear about ethanol in all this discussion?
Somebody want to make a comment about that?
In our Brazilian calculations, we have the ethanol program in, actually. And what we also did is ethanol, when you produce it, produces a pure CO2 stream. And we had additional calculations with carbon capture and sequestration. And these, the results are really phenomenal. It's kind of an old technology in a way, traditional, but it can actually already deliver quite interesting carbon benefits. Of course, we have
I'm going to leave that over there. All right.
But it reduces competition for land.
To both people, short question, short answer. Please, Joy.
Well, 2 short comments. One, in dealing with the 10 blocks in agriculture, it's very important to talk about shifting much more sharply away from conventional modern monocropping kinds of agriculture to cropping systems that embed in more carbon, that protect more soil nutritions and things like that. Because if not, the study that Hans Herren, the president of the Mountain Institute, has done shows that we won't be able to feed the world by 2050 unless we shift to more productive and kind of agriculture. And the other thing is, in looking at sequestration methods, I think it would also be important to start considering things like seagrass, which does sequester a lot, and it's been wiped out in many areas, clearing out harbors and stuff like that. But it could be a major source of sequestration at very low cost and helping local fishing industries and things like that. So that's another important aspect of sequestration to take into account.
One of you want to comment? Ann,
Well,
go ahead.
Just in terms of the first point, I don't have no responsibility for seagrass management, so I'll avoid that. Although that's an excellent point. No, and in fact, one of the strategies that I mentioned in the building blocks is exactly to change the cropping systems, to increase no-till, to be able to get more carbon into soil. And actually, one of the things that some of the germplasm material is showing us is to get deeper root systems, and there's an added benefit to that. Deeper root systems allow us to also capture deeper water rather than having to be doing a whole lot of irrigation, which is a whole other part of this equation in the food, energy, water nexus space. So you're right on, and taking new approaches to agriculture is clear in the agricultural production system is definitely on our plate.
Good, thanks. Thank you. Rafe, you do come on up and give your question. Yours, sir, and then Rafe will finish up with his comment or question.
Yeah, I'd like to ask, where are the reality checks to the rates of progress that were conspicuously absent from all these grand projections about what can be done? And I say that in the context that I've planted over 1/3 of a million trees already, for the most part on Ms. Bartuska's national forest land, where a lot of what we did was what's called type conversion, which was the conceit that you could clear cut a certain association of trees and plant a completely different one, and it would work. But I also worked on development projects in Mexico and elsewhere with Latin America. And there was a whole lot of super trees, Lucena, Casuarina, all these trees that were for development of poor people in the countryside. We're going to be these magical results would ensue. And in the case of the Amazon, you could take it all the way back to the ruins of Fordlandia. In other words, there's been a lot of plans ambitious plans for massive reforestation, where is the actual resolved history of these plans, and how does that, how do your lofty goals and plans, meet reality in terms of what happened? It's very difficult to establish a forest, especially because there's all these creatures, great and small, that are already there,
Yeah.
or want to be there, and there's all these people, etc.
Yeah, thanks for
Phil.
the question. I didn't have time to mention it, but, well, first of all, the issue you raised is really important, and if you want to make progress on any major global challenge like this, you have to continually measure how well you're doing. It is possible, and Woods Hole Research Center is one of the places that does this, it is possible to quite accurately now measure above ground biomass using remote sensing methods. And we do that, and we publish annual country by country measures of progress in slowing deforestation. More should be done along those lines, and I think it would be, as we move into this new phase of life after the Paris Agreement, I think it would be very useful to have more attention placed on monitoring progress and calling attention to, well, on a policy level, on a local policy level, what works well and what doesn't work well, and also on a broader geographical scale, on the scale of countries, calling attention to which countries are doing relatively well and making good progress, and which are not, in a constructive manner intended to accelerate progress.
Thanks. It is a tough question, and it's a good question, and it's one that should always be on our minds as we move forward. Rafe, I did not wish to put you back, but I want you back, okay? Rafe Pomeranz.
My question's for the panel, any and all. Maybe there's a connection back to the Arctic study.
Why don't you take that and mic
Take
in your
this?
hand?
Okay. Last year, or 2015, was the second worst year in terms of Alaskan Canadian fires on record. And the anticipation is that we lose more northern hemisphere snow cover as we warm the Arctic. The expectation is that the northern or high latitude boreal forests and tundra will burn massively, and there's fear of mega fire years. So, based on the lessons we've learned in the tropics, I'm wondering how is this your analysis, the tropics? Because the main ingredient here is not human activity in the direct sense. It's the warming in the boreal forest. So there is some kind of connection, however, where we have to integrate. I mean, the question is, when you're doing the numbers, are you taking into account the fate of the boreal forests?
Thank you, Rafe.
I did my dissertation on Siberia, and yes, we do in our global scenarios. However, when we do the integrated assessment scenarios, this is kind of the new IPCC scenarios. We actually don't allow for climate change in our baseline scenario. We did not do the iteration with the climate models. So actually, if we get runaway climate effects like pests and diseases, forest fires, and permafrost thawing, then all of the mitigation portfolios on the energy sector and also on negative emission technologies will be very different. And this is something we were just about to do. One group here in the US is leading on this, but there's a lot of work to be done. And the world is stochastic, and there's a lot to be seen. And, well, there's so many issues, but there's huge uncertainty. It's taken account a little bit, but absolutely not properly.
Thanks. Ray, you looked like you were perplexed.
No, not perplexed. I just wanted to add a word about the pest issue. Because you move to the southern boreal, the jack pine forest extend all the way across Canada.
Yeah. And
The bark beetle has now jumped from the west side of the Rockies east. The expectation is it will invade the entire jack pine.
Yeah.
Knock them off, right?
yeah, no.
Yep.
And there are very few models. And if you look into the new statistics of Siberia, you start to cry even more.
All right, I
So
think
can I-
whoops, sorry, Ann. Go
Okay.
ahead.
I just want to make 2 points. One, in response to the previous question about lofty goals. In fact, what I presented are not lofty goals. They are very doable goals within budget, and we felt like these were accomplishable. So we tried to not be out there so much that we would not be able to accomplish that. And the other, since we brought up Arctic again, I did want to just mention with regard to indigenous local knowledge that there is a body of an approach being developed through the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, which is going to be a methodology on how you can bring indigenous local knowledge into policy making. So stay tuned, because that should be out early next year.
Thank you very much. Would you all agree this was a stimulating session? A hand for our people. With that, I'll turn us back to Don, and he can help us wrap up the day.
Ooh, wow, there's another step. We've got to watch those steps. Thank you, everyone. I think not only was this a stimulating session, but I think we had 3 stimulating sessions where we got, I don't know, I learned one heck of a lot. And so what I would like to start off with is a round of applause for all of the speakers. I think. And before I thank certain organizations and things, I would like to have a wrap-up by Pavel.
Thank you, Don, and thank you all for this fascinating exchange and this afternoon, and also for underlining the basic proposition of this afternoon, which was today is tomorrow. And I think it was said by many of you, for all of us, for science and policy, for policy and science, for businesses. I don't want to summarize because I think everything was said. I would like to make one additional proposition to think before we leave. We have been listening to fantastic accounts of physical, environmental, biological science crowd. We have been listening to extremely advanced and world-leading policies. I would like to congratulate from this again to US government, to White House, to State Department, to you, for really showing that all these policies could be taken on the Arctic. I was thinking, I'm Dutch, and when I listened to your proposition about paying for carbon, I think we should talk, because we have been trying like crazy. We have been even to Brussels for the new CAP. We tried to introduce that trade-off, but we failed. No. Why did we fail? I believe there is one big elephant in the room. This is realization that perhaps it is not only physical, biological, natural science which is talking successfully to the policies which will take us further. I think this big elephant is called social political science, institutional transformation, governance of this world. How would it look like? Because that's where probably the biggest barrier is to implement this knowledge. So I would like to make a call for the next interaction like this, where we actually will take seriously on board the social institutional transformation scientists, cognitive scientists, behavioral economics. This is missing in this room. And I'm making promise to you as a IIASA director with my council chair that we think seriously about investing into such a dialogue, because I believe this is something which is missing. Thank you very much again. We are proud to be here with you. IIASA is proud to have the United States on its board as the biggest supporter, and we'll be back. Thank you very much.
We have, we've heard, the only thing between the reception is me. And so I'm going to make this very short. But what happens is, I think we've had wonderful talk, wonderful discussions, but we come down to the pragmatic statement. A lot is being done, but what can we here do to contribute? And one of the things is as we've seen through the questions and during the discussions and coffee breaks, which was very abbreviated, people wanting to talk with other people. Well, there's a lot of people from IIASA here, a lot of other speakers. We got Michael, we got Wolfgang, we got Anna. And so during the reception we have here, let's make it a working reception where indeed you have an opportunity to get up and talk to some of these people. 2 people I would like to ask to stand. Maggie Collins and Kathy Bailey. Where are you, Kathy? They're the ones who really did all of the heavy work, all the heavy lifting to get this wonderful session accomplished. And again, my thanks for that. I, of course, want to thank a couple of organizations and the Austrian Embassy, the IASA, and the National Academy of Sciences through Kathy and some of the others. And so with that, folks, let us adjourn to the reception.